Hi, Easy here. Welcome to a discussion on Lost Ark, especially in preparation for the release for North America and Europe. And one of the big hot topics when it comes to a game, especially an MMO from Asia, which is the monetization. So the big question that a lot of people have is Lost Ark pay to win? And for those of you guys who are just tuning into this to see what the answer is, too long didn't watch, instead of didn't read, didn't watch. The short answer is to a certain degree. And the reason why it's not a yes or no is because the definition of pay to win is going to vary very drastically from person to person. And what you deem to be pay to win isn't necessarily going to be what I deem to be pay to win or someone else deems to be pay to win. And even nowadays, pay to win isn't really a concept that's more applicable for some of the modern MMOs. So long story short, you'll be able to utilize and use all of the services and features made available in Lost Ark without having to pay a single penny. You're going to be able to experience all the content. You're going to be able to do all of what the game has to offer without paying a single cent. So that in itself is a very good aspect for free-to-play players. However, for those of you guys who are more willing to spend money on this game, spending money does indeed help you with PvE progression. But one key metric is that it's not by such a large margin that you can never catch up. So previous pay-to-win games such as Blade and Soul, BDO, MapleStory, a lot of other Asian MMOs will have mechanics where you just simply can't catch up if you're not spending the money. Whereas in Lost Ark, that's not as severe, and quite frankly, it's not that prevalent. You'll be able to experience all the content, you'll be able to do everything, you'll be able to get your character to a happy level, happy gear score without having to spend a single penny. But let's get into the details of everything that's associated with kind of what is there to pay for, what is pay to win in Lost Ark, and what you can expect from the game as you spend more time, and for some of you guys spend more money. So what is pay to win? I mentioned this earlier, but the definition is going to vary very drastically from each individual. So we're going to look at different parts of Lost Ark that you might find to be really pay to win. So first thing is, like, we got to identify what we can buy in Lost Ark with real money, because that kind of outlines what are things that we can take advantage of, or what are things that we can have more of that someone who's not paying might have. And the first thing is, obviously, you get to buy royal currency, the royal crystal currency in Lost Ark. So it's this orange looking crystal, and there's also another cash currency which is called a blue crystal, but these can either be acquired by purchasing them with royal currency, the royal crystals, or by purchasing them through the in-game currency exchange system, which allows you to convert gold into crystals, blue crystals. The blue crystals are used for certain purchases, whereas royal crystals are used for other types of current purchases. So I've outlined some of the few items here. Some of the premium items in the cash shop can only be purchased using the royal crystals. So things like jumping boosts. Jump boosts can only be purchased with crystals, the real life crystals. I'll just call them orange and blue. With the orange crystals, let's see what else. Some of the packages which are tradable are only available with orange crystals. There's also the subs, the monthly sub, quote unquote, that you can buy with orange crystals, as well as special packages. Everything else, for the most part, majority of other shop items have blue crystal equivalents, including outfits. So if you want to have an outfit that you don't really care about trading or getting like a gold value out of, you're more than welcome to buy them with blue crystals, which in turn means that you can buy them from either the auction house, which from the people that traded, or by converting your gold into blue crystals to buy them from the auction house. or from the cash shop. There's also other items that are more convenience and like kind of not as important, such as feathers of resurrection, which aren't really that big of a deal because most of the end game content that matters you're not going to be able to resurrect anyways. You also have like peons for auction house, the auction house currency for tradable item purchases. You also have battle item packages which you can purchase, and Mari shop namely. So royal crystal, the important part about the orange crystals is that the orange crystals have a certain value set by the server economy. So depending on which server you're in and how many people are selling their gold, aka to trade for blue crystals, and how many people are actually trying to purchase more gold, obviously it's going to fluctuate the market and economy, and you'll be getting different amounts of value from the same currency that you put in. So $10 is going to give you different amounts of gold depending on the state of the economy, which means that if you're somebody who wants to spend, let's say $2,000 right now into the game to get as much gold as possible, that immediate injection of currency into the market is going to adversely affect the value of gold that you're going to get for every dollar of money that you spend. So that's one thing to take into consideration. So important part about pay to win isn't really not just about what you can buy, but how these things affect you in game. So one of the things is everyone, regardless of if you're free to play, if you're someone who just spends a couple dollars every month, or if you are a mega whale, everyone shares the same economy. So things like tradable outfits, tradable pets, items in the auction house which are from the cash shop which you buy with orange crystals, all of these are going to be shared even among people who don't pay a single cent. So the big pros of this aspect is that cash shop items can be bought with gold, which are earned in game. So it means that even if you're free to play, if you have a really, really nice outfit that you want, or an avatar, or whatever it might be from the cash shop that you really want, you're not restricted to that. You can get it. It's not like a skin from League of Legends or something else where you have to buy it on your character and your character only. There's also, it also means that there aren't any items or contents that are locked behind a paywall. You're not going to have to spend $10 to get a certain item, because there will be a way for you to acquire that item either through in-game or through trading or through the auction house, whatever it might be. And almost all meaningful items and services are available through playing the game alone. So all the content like islands, raids, guardian bosses, etc., PvP, in fact, everything is available without having to pay a single cent. The cons of this kind of monetization is that your personal economy is going to dictate the speed of your progression. And this is the part that gets really hazy, where people will argue that Lost Ark is pay to win because the fact that somebody is progressing at a faster rate than somebody else who's not spending any money, there is discernible difference and a distinct disparity in power level between these two characters. And I can definitely see that side of argument as well. Another big part of this is the fact that server economy really depends on how much the whales in your server are willing to spend. So for example, in MapleStory, which is another Korean MMO, there's a server where there's a very, very famous whale who spends almost hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on MapleStory. So the economy in that server is more expensive, and the value of money in that game is significantly more inflated in that server specifically compared to other servers. So depending on where you're playing and what server you're on, you may have either positive or negative effects due to the fact that somebody is willing to spend more money than what you make on a yearly salary or something like that, right? So I've kind of thought about all these different aspects and came up with a small chart to kind of give you an idea of like what you can expect by the monetization that Lost Ark has. So the numbers are arbitrary, and this is on a per month. So if we're looking at pure free-to-play player, they're spending $0 a month. If you're looking at someone who's more of a sub player, as in like they're willing to pay $15 to $20, about $25 a month on the game because they enjoy it and they feel like it's a way for them to support the developers, that's where I put the sub players. Moderate spenders are those who are willing to part with more of their money on a monthly basis because they like the outfits, they like to have a higher speed of progression, etc., etc. And they're not as stingy or as they're more willing to part with their money. And then for heavy spenders, I've put it as 500 plus a month. These are the kind of people that you would classify as whales as you go by in your day-to-day activity. I've also separated each category into people who are more casual, as in they don't really care too much about their progression. They don't really care too much about like they don't spend a lot of time in the game. They want to, but either they can't or they just don't care. Whatever it might be, these are people who are less invested into the game. There's also mid-core players who I would assume is like almost 60 to 70% of all players. Actually more like 40, I guess, because there's definitely more casual players than what it might seem. So mid-core players are people who I would classify as people who care about the game. They care about their progression, they care about where they are, they care about their the group of people that they play with, how they appear, their reputation. All these things kind of classify them into mid-core. And I personally believe I'm in the mid-core group as well. And then there's the hardcore players who basically define themselves by the success in the game. This is all they really care about. They're spending significant amount of their time throughout the day on the game, doing a lot of things, whether it's for themselves or for the community, whatever it might be. This is a huge part of their life. So let's go through each money category and kind of see where it ends up. Okay, so for pure free-to-play players who don't spend any money, for casual people, you do have to choose between your outfits and kind of character gear progression. So what I mean by this is like sometimes you have to pick between, do I want to spend my gold on my character, or do I want to spend my gold making my character look nice? And that might be a hard decision sometimes. For mid-core players, obviously mid-core players are going to care more about their character progression more than anything. So they're going to mostly rely on event outfits so that they can look not like crap. But because they care more about their progression, they sometimes sacrifice their appearance, which means events are more of where they get their outfits. And for hardcore players, for those who are hardcore but don't want to spend any money, they do have to maintain a good amount of alts in order to maintain high enough income to compete with others who are just as hardcore. And there are changes in the talks in Korea server about kind of going away from this alt frenzy way of making money into more of a your main character oriented growth. But as of right now, this is how things are. So for those who are willing to spend a little bit of money each month, like $20 for the subs, there's two different kind of subs. One for your estate. Let me check. Yeah, one for your estate, which is the Nineveh's blessing, and one for just in general gameplay, which is Beatrice's. So in Korea server, both of these, if you buy both of them, it's $20. So that's kind of where I put that reference. So for all kind of players, having the sub just makes everyday activity significantly more convenient. So you get more slots for teleportation, you get more affinity activities, you have more there's a whole bunch of stuff that you get out of it. Faster boat speeds, reduced cost of teleportation, there's just a lot of stuff. And honestly, I'm personally going to do this pay the quote-unquote sub with every month without any issues. But it is a significant chunk of change if you look at over the course of a year. So I definitely understand those who are more hesitant about it. I wouldn't say it's like mandatory, but it definitely feels better when you have some of the convenience features that you get out of having Beatrice and having Nineveh's blessings. For moderate spenders, let's go through the casual first. For moderate spenders who are casual, you're looking at a pretty good gear progression, pretty good pace with a lot of outfits and packages that you can buy, and you'll get full benefit out of these, like extremely high efficiency. And it's kind of the same deal for mid-core players as well. You get to look good with outfits, and you get to feel good with good gear progression. And now for hardcore players, I would imagine having $100+ a month, you can maintain less alts. You have to spend less time. You get to spend less time kind of doing all the homework on a day-to-day basis. And even after doing less stuff and maintaining less alts, you'll be able to get similar results as a free-to-play hardcore player. So basically, you're spending money to save time. Essentially, that's what it comes down to. And then we come to heavy investors, heavy people who are very, very heavily invested. And for casual players, I simply just put, I love Lost Ark, but I have a full-time job and kids that need my time and my attention, or else I failed as a parent. So because you don't have the ability to spend as much time as you want into the game, you compensate by spending a lot of money on it, which is fine. That's to each to their own. For mid-core players, honestly, I have to ask, are you sure you're not a hardcore player at this point? Because spending $500 a month on a game is quite a heavy investment. And then for hardcore players, you're now pushing the boundaries of efficiency into straight up injecting Dogecoins into Bezos' bloodstream directly. And I know Bezos stepped down, but it doesn't matter because he still rules us all. So that's kind of where I put almost every single, like just generalized categories. And this I feel like is a pretty good indication of like what kind of experience you'll have. Now, of course, everything depends on how many what you want to get out of the game, how much time you're willing to spend in game, how much time you have to do all the homework, and how many alts you're willing to have. So there's a lot of factors that go into this, even without taking into the money into consideration, because something different about Lost Ark is the concept of economy when it comes to Lost Ark is slightly different, because to me, I personally define the Lost Ark economy as a combination of in-game resource and real-life resource. So in-game resources is obviously gold, your character progression, your expedition progression, how many alts you have, so you get gold through different ways of that, life skill, for example, energy. There's a bunch of ways to increase in-game economy, and all of them require time. There's also another thing called the real-life economy where I'm looking at, and there's only really one way to increase real-life economy, which is just spend more money. However, both of these methods both lose efficiency very steeply after a certain point. So to give you examples, life skill energy recovers at a set rate in-game. So spending more time on life skills after using up all of the energy is going to decrease your efficiency of how much gold you're getting through that activity or through that time. As for real life economy, some of the packages that you will get every month, which have limited quantities that you can buy, are extremely worth it. As in, you get a lot of value out of it per dollar compared to if you were just to exchange it straight into gold. However, because these are limited purchases, after you start spending more than what you can buy, each dollar gets you less gold. It just gets you less gold every time. The more you spend, the less you're gonna get out of it. So, because of these two different factors, everyone's ideal economy is going to be drastically different. So my economy is going to look completely different than someone else. And obviously the hardcore spending $500+ a day is going to have the highest economy, and that's just by the nature of the fact that they're spending more time. That alone, more time alone, is going to dictate the economy very significantly. But because they're also investing into the game through $500+ a month, you're getting a lot more than what a casual player, for example, here would have by spending zero money and not as many hours into it. So, I mean, obviously these are two very drastically different, basically the extremities on two different ends. But most people are going to be sitting around somewhere between hardcore free-to-play players, hardcore sub players, casual sub players, and as you get into higher amounts, less and less people. And obviously this is going to be very, very much an outlier of players. These are going to be the top 5% who are top 5% spenders, not necessarily top 5% players. And then these are going to be the majority over here, right? So the whole reason why we're talking about this is pay to win is going to be extremely different for every single person. And one big thing that I still haven't mentioned is the fact that PvP is normalized. So it doesn't really matter if you take into consideration what are you winning against? What are you winning? You might say it's a big win for an individual to be ahead of everyone else in terms of progression, which I agree with. I think being on top of progression is something that you can win in a video game. But a lot of other people will say that because it's PvE, you're just fighting against computers. That doesn't matter. Player versus player is where you truly win, and if player versus player gets affected by money, that's when it becomes pay to win. And I can see the argument for that as well. So in terms of player versus player, there is no pay to win, simply put. So one of the last things I want to cover is kind of like how it compares to other MMOs. So both WoW and FFXIV are probably the most popular ones that I can compare to, Western MMOs at least, because a lot of other Asian MMOs are extremely pay to win. So WoW, let's look at WoW. WoW is $40 for the base game. Same thing with Final Fantasy. The sub for both games runs at around $15, 13 to 12, all the way down to like 11 for World of Warcraft if you get the 1 year at a time. And then there's some additional features for Final Fantasy on their subs, like additional retainers, additional whatever it might be. And then notoriously nowadays there's additional services that you can purchase. So for example, I put in boosts. World of Warcraft boosts are $60. Actually, that might have changed. Last time I checked, it was $60. Final Fantasy boosts are $25. So if you're looking at over the course of like a month or like a year, we're looking at about like 15 times what, 12? Okay, it's not gonna do that for me. Let's do some 15 multiply 15. I can't type to save my life for some reason. If you multiply, that's like $180, right? $180 a year. And let's say you bought a booster too, right? So let's say additional $70. $70, let's say. You're spending about $250 a month or a year on a video on the game. And there are other things that you can buy outside of what the game offers in Final Fantasy and World of Warcraft, such as RMT. You can buy a lot of gold and buy a lot of gil in Final Fantasy through RMT sites, which I don't recommend nor do I promote, but that's just a reality. I know a lot of people who've bought gold and gil using money like that, and to be quite honest, in those games, you can buy gear with gold and with gil. You can buy gear that's almost end game level. And in fact, in Final Fantasy, because that's the one I did a lot of progression in, the very first week, raiding teams will gather almost 100 something million gil for potions, for food, and in particular crafted gear, a full set of crafted gear that are pentamelded and all of that, which is a significant chunk of change in comparison to, let's say, a more casual group who isn't going to be using those kind of gears. So the disparity that I feel like a lot of people argue when it comes to Lost Ark and like the pay to win aspect of it, I think gets really muddled down when you really look at the details of it, because people will be arguing about the nuances of how things are and all of these things, when in reality the same kind of problem and the same kind of pay to win aspect exists for every single other MMO in the world. The fact is, games are designed to make money. It's a business. How are you gonna make that money? And honestly, you might say like, oh, just give us more skins, give us more outfits, give us more this. This is a way to monetize. This is a way to do it. But you can't change the way things are monetized unless you are the executive and the business maker at that company. So we can sit here on our gaming chairs and complain about how it's poorly monetized, this or that. And quite frankly, the way that WoW is monetizing World of Warcraft right now, Blizzard is really shitting their pants, in my honest opinion, when it comes to it, because of their boost, their current classic situation with their Burning Crusade and all of that. It's a mess, right? But that's just where the games are moving towards, especially free-to-play games. The most important part that I think people forget is that you can play all of Lost Ark without spending a single penny into it, and get the same kind of experience that you get against people who've been spending hundreds of dollars. You might not get there as fast as them, but you can still get there. That's the important part. If I compare it to like Blade and Soul, if you didn't spend a certain amount of money into the troves or other pay-to-win RNG boxes, you simply did not get to participate in some of the content that's available. And it's not even, oh, I'll get there in a couple of years. It's like some people just don't get to play until the game says, all right, you've suffered enough. Here's some extra free shit. Let me nerf all of the progression. And obviously, you might think it's like the same thing in Lost Ark, but we're talking maybe a couple month difference instead of a couple of years of difference. So I think that in itself is a positive for Lost Ark. A free-to-play player is going to be playing the same game as someone who's spending hundreds of dollars a month. And I think that's the important part, is that everyone gets to play the same game even without having to spend money. And that's why I don't think Lost Ark is pay to win. There are aspects that are very much pay to progress, but it's not necessarily, you're not winning a lot. That's the key important part. You're not winning too much. One last thing that I kind of want to talk about is like cards. Now this is the Black Horse, in my opinion. There's a card system in Lost Ark where you collect different cards, and depending on the level of your cards and the set effects, you get some really, really strong benefits. Currently, the best card set is a fully legendary set, which requires 18 levels to gain a decent effect, and 30 levels to gain the full effect. And there are very, very, very few players in Korea who actually have the full effect. Majority of whales have like 18 plus 18 effect, the second level 18 effect, and almost everyone else, including people who spend considerable amount of money every month, are going to be using a more free-to-play friendly set. And this is one thing that you will simply not get to experience unless you spend money. So this part, I believe, is going to be pretty pay to win, and I think this is where people are going to be most contentious about, because even whales have a hard time acquiring the Light of Salvation set. It's pretty brutal. You have to get very lucky, and you have to be very diligent about your cards, as well as purchasing cards from Mari's shop and etc. in order to get it. But outside of this, I really think Lost Ark's pay-to-win structure Monetization is one of the best that I've seen in an Asian MMO, and it's one of the best ones that you will get to experience when it comes as a free-to-play player. Honestly, there's so much in the game that you don't even have to spend a single dime for, that it won't affect you as much. Everyone's progression is going to be different. Don't get too caught up with what anyone else is doing. Just focus on what you want to do and what you want to do in the game, what you enjoy. If you like raids, focus on that. See what you can do to make raids, be your best at raids as best as possible. And if that means you have to make a lot of gold, well, you're going to have to make a couple alts. You're going to have to be diligent about your life skills, etc., etc. But the reality is that everyone's gonna have different amount of time to spend. Everyone's gonna have different amount of money to spend, and everyone's progression is gonna be different. Everyone, however, still gets to play the same game, and everyone gets to enjoy the same content and do what everyone else is doing, without having to be blocked behind the paywall. And I think that's the important part. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you've stuck around all this time, you know I've babbled on for far too long about a topic that's been far too milked. So if you only watched the first couple minutes of the video, that's fine. If you've sticked around all this time, thank you. Hopefully I'll have more videos and more content that's more related to the actual stuff in game, so that we can start getting ready for the October release. But hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys next time.